It's so wonderful to be back at DTEC. It's a really, really highly energized environment, and I always love coming back here. It almost is like coming back home. And we started this initiative very recently called StartupX. It's X as an exponential. There are lots of companies here, and I want them to actually feel that exponential energy. Now, a lot of these young startups and entrepreneurs, they epitomize what startups are about. They have courage, they have the resilience, they need to be resourceful. They need to have all of those elements inside them so they can go out there and perform. What we at StartupX are doing is giving them a platform. We're giving them a mouthpiece. We're giving them a pulpit to actually go out there and to be able to tell their story. This is about stories, and we're going to go and do a deep dive into some of their stories today and share them with you, and then enjoy the insights. Today we have a very special privilege. I personally feel a very special privilege. I have my guru, one of my mentors, Professor Ira Kaufman. And Professor Kaufman is here from the United States, from Virginia, and he is with us today, and for this weekend actually, to share his insights and his experience over almost 30, 40, 50 years of his life, where he has engaged with people from all over the world. He's a true globalist. He's a philanthropist. He's an impact creator, an impact deliverer, and we're going to talk to him today. And Professor, welcome. Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. It's a real, as I said, a privilege, pleasure, an honor to have you here all the way from the US. So how was your trip? Where did you fly in from?
Well, I flew in from Tokyo. I was giving a keynote speech to a group of top executives there, and the topic was winning transformations, how do you achieve Society 5.0.
Okay.
And it's an interesting thing because you have a country like Japan, and the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is challenging the Japanese people to lead the world in creating an integrated, values-driven approach to technology and change.
So let's stay focused on that as far as Japan is concerned. An extremely successful, advanced economy, in many ways extremely creative and innovative in how they execute. On the other hand, they have a very, very structured culture, and that culture sort of is part of their success, but part of their hindrance for the future. How did you find that? How did that come together in your office?
What I thought was most interesting is that Prime Minister Abe said for this initiative to be successful, we have to break down 5 walls in the country.
Right.
See, he acknowledged exactly what you're saying. The first wall is we need to break down the ministerial wall. The ministries have to be much more responsive and not tracking their old ways of doing things. The second thing is they had to break down the legal structure because they weren't being reform enough minded to be open-minded for the new entrepreneur. The third thing, they needed to look at technology and need to absorb the best practice of technology, not only in Japan, but they wanted to go global and then bring it in.
Yeah.
And the third thing they wanted to look at was the way that social impact. They had to look at the impact that ethics and values were having on the entire society. So he realized that, and he said part of the success that we're going to have in leading the world as a model is to break down those walls so then we can open the door up to this new change.
Professor, if it ain't broke, why fix it? They're still doing really well. They're the 3rd largest economy in the world. They make a lot of money, very, very high per capita income. How do you inspire people to say, nope, you're going to do it differently now, because 20 years from now, your grandchildren will live in a different world, and therefore you need to hurt and you need to suffer today. Why would they do that? What's the catalyst?
Well, one of the things they're looking at is they have the largest aging population in the world.
Yeah.
So they have a pain point, and they have to look at how they can develop a wellness program which is inclusive of that aging population. So they need to understand how to develop that. The second thing they realize is that they're not inclusive enough. They don't have new immigrant populations coming in, diversifying and creating innovation.
Yeah.
So they need to find a way to really engage their economy and stimulate new kinds of investment, and thereby by taking the lead in this society 5.0 and transitioning from our current world 4.0, they have sort of an initiative and advantage as a model. And they had a lot of very good models. They had the Sony model, they had the Panasonic model, they had the Fujitsu model, and all those things have dissipated in terms of their strength.
Right.
So I think that they're right now trying to re-energize their economy as a leader. It was very interesting. We spent a lot of time with Nestle, and Nestle income had declined from the 90s into 2010, even with the new Nespresso machine. And they looked at themselves as an entrepreneur. And what they did is they went into the marketplace and looked at what they needed, and they created a whole new division as a partnership called Nestle Wellness. And they started integrating the antioxidants in green tea into their Kit Kats, into their drinks, and created this coffee making machine into a protein shake machine.
Okay.
So they're now, and the growth is now changed completely, and it's reoriented them because they created a new thing which is sensitive to this population.
I love the Nespresso story. I wasn't going to go there initially, but I think now that you've mentioned it, I love the Nespresso story as far as Nestle is concerned, is that literally it was a sandbox on the side, and because the core board and the structure of management wouldn't allow something like an Nespresso to flourish, and they created it separately, and it's become one of the most profitable business units, and obviously now re-energizing it. That is, for me, a very interesting segue into transforming companies from where they are today, how they create these little sandboxes, and then grow from there. So a lot of the companies that are represented today, could they be part of that little sandbox?
Well, I think Nestle as a global icon of industry is very interesting, because some 20 years ago, one of the chief executives went to Egypt, where they were making this bottled water, and they went on the production line, and the executive was interviewing people and discussing with people, and all of a sudden he found out that the people who were making the bottled water didn't have clean water in their house, didn't have money for education for their children, they didn't have a way to bring up the next generation to buy Nestle products. So the CEO went back to the company, and it took him 1 decade, not a week, not a month, but 1 decade to transform the entire social impact measurement system of Nestle, and finally created the way that Nestle would create or be the initiative. A company was evaluated in each country based upon their profits as well as their social impact to the community. And it was all instigated by this little water bottle and the discrepancy in values between the company and what they say in their brochure and on their board and their website, and how they live them. That's one thing. The second thing that Nestle has done has created a global group of, it's called the Digital Transformation Accelerator, where they take young people, like some of your entrepreneurs here, and they bring them from all around the world, and they create the highest level of integration around innovation and around their purpose. And they try to create new hubs of creating new ideas and using the most advanced digital metrics and technology to challenge those. So to me, what is needed in an entrepreneurial venture is to have a constant way of refreshing and being constantly fresh in their ideas, because that is what's going to be the change agent in the world today.
Indeed, and I think as far as this bottle is concerned, this shouldn't even be there. We should not be drinking our water in the future, we should be eating our water, we should be eating this bottle.
Well, I mean, that's
actually started.
No, but that's very important, because I was speaking to one of your colleagues here, one of the people who are going to speak, and this group is working on purposeful design.
Absolutely.
Okay, so why is this bottle contributing to billions and billions of wasteful products which are being put into dumps? Why is this not created a bottle which could be recycled as a glass, or in a different way? Why are we not drinking water out of recyclable paper
Yes.
instead of these plastic bottles, which are bad for our environment, bad for the use of petroleum products and so forth?
Yep.
Because we do not make that value important enough in our society.
Indeed. Professor, you're an extremely evolved human being. And I have had the privilege of understanding and learning. But for our audience, could you tell us where it all started for you? Just tell us about your young days, and it's a flashback, Hollywood-style flashback.
Well,
and then we'll come to today, and then we'll discuss some more stuff.
well, you know, I began many years ago. I was a 60s kid.
Okay.
And the 60s kids in America did a lot of different things. They revolted against the rules of the society. And some people were revolting with, against the war. And
Yes.
some people were revolting against civil rights. And some people smoked dope, and they revolted in terms of their ecstatic experiences. I chose to revolt on the consumerist line. And my guru, my mentor was a man called Ralph Nader. And Ralph Nader was the foremost consumerist in the world. And he tried to fight against General Motors for unsafe cars and against additives in foods. And I then did my undergraduate work, and then I got a very nice opportunity to go to the Kellogg School. And I studied under really the father of modern marketing, a man called Philip Kotler, who's written all the textbooks on marketing. And he invited me to be the first PhD student to work on social marketing, how you use marketing to create social change. And we wrote a book on creating social change in 1972.
Okay.
So then I left that, and I taught at the University of Manchester, and I was a guy with long hair and a jean jacket and no tie and shirt in very classic England, style.
I can totally visualize
I
that.
was totally the weird guy, and I was talking about women empowerment and all kinds of crazy things. And I created a thing called the Technology Assessment Consumerism Center. I was very entrepreneurial there because I was a social entrepreneur at that point.
Right.
And what I did was I realized that the biggest pain point in the English society was their bread, because they all loved their bread. And their bread was pure white and deadly. It was white bread.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big lie. And their brown bread was all caramel colored. And their Hovis bread was additives which weren't real. And we went and did a social investigation, interdisciplinary, with young people from biology and chemistry and management and so forth. And we created a report called TAC Attacks Bread. And then I became, on closed circuit TV, the American entrepreneur was going to kill the white bread industry in there, and they wanted to throw me out of the country. So that was a whole long story. So then I left there, and then I went and came back to America and joined a nonprofit called Legacy International. And the president and founder is Jay Rash. Is very visionary, and he invented an idea called practical idealism. And it came out of actually Mahatma Gandhi was one of the initiators of it. And he wanted to create a way for young people to have the ideals and the values, which were universal, those core values, but translate them very practically into the world to make a measurable difference. So I worked on that project for about 20 years and then formed my own boutique marketing company. And as that evolved, I realized that values had to be the central core of the change agent, the power agent in the world. So I created my company in the marketing sense around that. And I taught at the university, and I consulted all around the world in different, multinationals, for-profits, nonprofits. And I then learned that there's a new thing coming out, emerging, called digital marketing.
Yeah.
So I went back to Professor Kaufman. I says, would you help me write the book? He said, no, you didn't write the book. I'm 70 years old. You need to write the book. So I wrote the book, but I wrote the book as digital marketing, integrating strategy and tactics with values. It was the first book. Now it's going into its second edition. It's been adopted in 100 different countries. But the purpose of it, it's really focusing on your mindset and your values and how those are the power points that is going to change our society and create a really positive bottom line. So I evolved that, and I worked with Legacy for a number of years, and most recently we founded the Global Transformation Corps, which is working with young entrepreneurs like these people here and trying to create a vortex of energy, and really we're trying to Uberize entrepreneurship. So if somebody has a good idea for sex slavery or an environmental responsible approach, they could share that online and It will be a network of impact investors, experts who will give them mentoring, as well as other social entrepreneurs. So we're going to create a network, an international network of these people that will work together to try to harmonize in a strategic way new solutions for the world.
You reinvented yourself in the digital space. What's the kind of advice do you give in terms of the opportunities with digital and some of the perils of going digital,
Well,
if any?
I think first of all, I learned that most people do not understand what digital means. Digital is an adjective, digital media, digital leaders. And what does digital really mean? It's when you apply digital to a resource, it becomes information rich and it becomes connected. Those two pieces together. And people do not understand that. They look at digital technologies as an add-on to their company. And the last thing, which is very important, it's a third element, digital is pervasive. It's not just technology driven. It's a change agent and a catalyst to changing the entire organization and the way we behave toward one another, how we interact with things. So the first thing I would do as an entrepreneur is understand what the digital model is all about and how you can incorporate that into your company. Many people use digital marketing as broadcast marketing, like Facebook. So they take it into that area. So to me, that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would look at is understanding what generation they're marketing to. If they're marketing to millennials and Z generation, young people, that's going to be 75% plus of the workforce in 10 years. That demographic has the highest level of values and social responsibility in the world. They want products and messages which are authentic, which involve them, which are engaging, and they are very willing to help market the product through their own means. So they have to be using these generations as assets as part of they're involved in engagement in terms of what they're trying to do. So they really have to understand the true message of digital. It's engaging and involving and connecting people, and they have to use the data in a very, very powerful way to understand, to personalize and customize their messaging to their target markets.
You know, let me challenge you on that, Professor, because I have a concept that I've created. It's called the silver tsunami, the tsunami of people with silver hair, because yes, we agree that 75% will be the millennial and the Z generation, or the people in the workforce. But 75% of the spend, my friends, is between you and me. Don't forget us. That's what I tell these entrepreneurs. We need to be looked after. And a lot of products that I see going out there are, and I go into hotels, for example, and they are tilted, the hotels are tilting towards the millennials. A friend of mine shared a funny story. He's an older gentleman, and he said when he's in the shower, for example, he can't read between shampoo and conditioner because the hotels are not actually following, and the font size is too small. So it's not designed for the older generation. It's designed for people who can read the smallest font ever. Where I'm going with this is that yes, we go down the millennial route, but with extended life expectancies that we have, with the fact that we live longer, work longer, isn't it almost strategically missing out on a whole older generation that we constantly do?
Well, I think that, you know, one really needs to look at the pain points of every generation. To me, the most important part of entrepreneurship is to disrupt at the gaps. You have to understand the gaps are in values, in function, in distribution, in product development. If you do a comparison, a competitive analysis in every one of those areas, you're going to find exactly what's missing in the font size. It's very, very important to do very deep research because we have the data on most of these people. Most people do not use the data very, very extensively. And to me, there's a lot of rich information in analytics and data, and we need to use that in a very positive way to construct the products. And yes, the Z generation and the X generation are very values driven, and they're gonna guide a lot of the future products. But there's a huge market in the baby boomers and the X generation who are gonna who would necessarily be doing. And it's also, you have to look at the cultures. All the cultures have different kinds of products and what they're being attracted to. The global culture, you know, I was in Japan, and across from the Westin Hotel is a 7-Eleven. So there's a 7-Eleven in every country, and the same business model. So what are we learning when we go from country to country? And what is good and what is bad? I think the really astute entrepreneur has to look at the gaps, really understand the gaps and research those gaps. And in the world we're in right now, we're not in the old world of R&D, where you test something for 6 months and go back to the thing, readapt it and so forth. You're in a 3D entrepreneurial, high risk-taking world where they're trying to increase the exponential, the yield from 10x to, from 10% to 10x.
Yeah.
So we have to really look at the way we're researching and the way we're innovating.
Professor, moving forward, there are a lot of young people who they want to follow their dream, and they start a startup. This is StartupX. This is a channel where new ideas are being created. But we know that 70, 80, sometimes even 90% of these folks are going to fail. Maybe the word isn't fail, maybe the word is they're experimenting or exploring. What's the process in their minds should they be thinking of as they start building up their businesses? And they will encounter difficulties and roadblocks. What's the mindset that they should be having?
Well, first of all, I really believe that if they can really anchor their purpose, what do they really want to accomplish with this entrepreneurial venture? Do they want to make a lot of money? Do they want to become a unicorn? Do they want to change the world? Do they want to have the best of both worlds? They want to win on both areas? Do they want to launch this exact product that they came up with, or do they want to be adaptive and flexible to be able to morph that product into what the market really needs, or what the market needs at this point, and maybe 5 years later they need something different? So to me, it's one of purpose. If you looked at Apple, Apple is a really good example. If an entrepreneur has not read Isaacson's book on Steve Jobs, it's a very valuable 500-page read, because you'll understand this man, who's not a very pure man. He cursed and he was very unkind, but he had one very simple passion of excellence. He demanded excellence and design aesthetics, because that was his differentiator. And people buy Apple because they are expecting that kind of excellence.
I understand that, and I understand where you're coming from. Excellence is a value, is a purpose, I get that, but when we talk about values-driven companies, are we talking about things like excellence and brilliance and operational efficiency? And that's very yesterday. Today, aren't we looking at things like social responsibility, things like the environment, things like that? So that's the sort of purpose. When I hear the word purpose in this context, that's what I hear. I don't hear excellence, I hear social responsibility. Am I wrong?
Yes, I'm saying, using that as an example in Apple. So I spoke to some of your colleagues from the concept, and they're marketing a product which is a tray which could be used in an airplane, and it's made out of recyclable products. It's lighter, it'll be more efficient, and so forth and so on. And their way of looking at this is that they said, well, we need to get Emirates Airlines to buy this. And I said, well, maybe you're approaching it from the wrong way. I said, you know, you have a power in your hands called digital marketing. You are a publisher as well as a person that interacts. You can then send a message out about this product, which is going to help the environment, which is going to help people, which is going to reduce the cost in the airlines. And instead of you having to convince people, they will come to you. So maybe the model is, it's a model of the martial arts. It's like jiu-jitsu. You, instead of trying to push yourself on the opponent, you reduce the resistance. You're much more tactical and strategic about your approaching it. So to me, there's a whole different model in creating what I call strategic harmony in the world. And you have to really evaluate the way you're using your purpose and your and your strategy. And the other thing is that, as I was speaking to this same group, I said, when you speak about the environment, or you speak about your purpose, what does it do to people? And the young lady says, well, it makes me feel passionate. It makes my heart feel good. And I said to the three of them, I said, when your heart feels good, what do you feel? And they say, love. Well, that's what's called brand love and brand trust. We're living in a world right now where in the last 2 years, the level of trust in 4 major institutions has gone down from over 65% to under 50%. There are more distrusters of the leaders in nonprofits, media, politics, and business than there are trusters. That's a sad state of the world. And the people who are buying products, they want to trust things. So therefore, how do we create trust in our customers? If our customers trust us, they love us. They want to buy. They want to become advocates. They will sell our product. If our employees trust us, most employees just work for a living. Let's be frank about it. They work for a living and they don't really care about their product. If they really cared and they loved their product and they were happy working there, what would they do? They'd be motivated to innovate. They'd be motivated to be more efficient. They'd be motivated and loyal to their company instead of splitting and leaving for the next thing. And what about the supply chain? If the supply chain really believed in the product and felt it was contributing to their bottom line, they would figure out a way to be more efficient and more loving of the product. And what about the community who's being affected by all these plastic bottles? If there was a paper bottle, don't you think that Nestle would be more loved by the community if they weren't contributing to all this garbage in their dumps?
Yeah.
And what about the investor? Don't you think the investor would appreciate the win-win solution? Why did Larry Fink take the largest money market fund of $6.4 trillion last year and say that every one of his investments have to be social, responsible, and fulfilling a quadruple bottom line? That's a change. So therefore, entrepreneurs must understand that they don't want to just become the richest person in the world.
Yeah.
They want to become something which is purposeful, and their richness will become in money and in what they accomplish.
One of my other Harvard professors, when I interviewed him, he spoke about an index, a quant-driven index, which is going to be built around social values. And instead of the stock market, and you go and just look at the financial value, that will be included. But in this top 1,000 companies, they'll be measured on their social impact.
Well, I'll tell you, one of my very good friends, colleagues, is friends of yours as well, Aisa. You know, he works for the United Nations Environment Program. He's the CFO and the United Nations Operations, and he says that most nonprofits and global organizations do not have sustainable indexes, and our goal is to change the index of the KPI, key performance indicators based on sales and revenue and so forth, to what we call a sustainable impact indicator, SII. If we were evaluating companies and nonprofits and development groups on SIIs, the entire value and the investment opportunity would be completely different. Yeah. So one of the inventions of an entrepreneurial team is they need to create the new SII, and that would be a phenomenal accomplishment.
We have a segment called the rapid fire question, and I'm going to ask you 4, 5, 6 questions rapidly, and I would like you to give your instant answers, because in this crazy, mad Instagram world, they need snippets. They don't want this long form chat, which will go on there. I don't care. But let's get the boring Instagram piece now, the fun Instagram pieces. So the quick fire question is, if I throw the word success at you, what instantly comes to your mind?
Holistic.
Holistic. When I throw the word failure.
Who?
Failure.
Failure?
Yeah.
Learning.
What one piece of advice you would give to every entrepreneur startup in here? One sort of small piece of advice.
I think that a startup individual has to have faith in themselves, and in faith they have to have perseverance, and they have to have humility. They have to be able to fail and replenish themselves, and I think they have to really hold up to their values, because that's their anchor through the turbulent times. They need to have something which is going to anchor them. It could be their religion, it could be their idealism, it could be their ethics. It has to be something which keeps them strong and focused on the goal. And that goal has to be their purpose. And if they are really clear on that, I think their way will be found.
I have a little summary on failure. Failure, to me, they are the 5 F's of failure. Do you guys know the 5 F's of failure? No, probably not. The 5 F's of failure are fail fast, fail frequently, fail frugally. Don't just keep bothering and going deeper. Fail fast, fail frequently, fail frugally. Failure is not fatal, and always fail forward. So these are the 5 F's of failure. And there's a 6th F for failure. Failure, F, is a good F word. So we have to think of it like that. So think of the 5 F's and think of a 6th good F, right? So that is the real sort of structure around failure. And to me, it's about experimenting, exploring, curiosity, learning, development. And it's this tinkering that we need to be doing and constantly improving towards perfection and brilliance. That is how we look at this new environment. I was asked how long a CV should be, and we were discussing, this was a Harvard Business School class on executive education class, and I said 2 pages long, and they said 2 pages? I said yes. I said all of you are successful, all of you GPA 4.8 and 4.0, and they said yes. I said okay, in that case all 71 of you to me are a commodity now. You're all the same, you're all smart, but you're all the same. How do you differentiate yourself? So when you write your success CV, you're right here, you write your success CV. This CV is your failure CV. What did you fail at? What did you learn from that? How resilient were you? How resourceful were you? How much courage do you have? How much passion do you have? That, to me, is the person I will hire. Because everybody's got the same MBA or whatever qualification and degree. I need a young person, or I need a person with courage and resourcefulness. That is who I hire. That's the new CV, guys. So that's my Instagram moment.
Can I share a story with you on this? So since I'm in Dubai, when I was in Japan, I was asked how companies struggle with trying to understand their transition from a world of 4.0 to the world of 5.0. So I told an old Sufi story about the jester Mullah Nasruddin. And Mullah Nasruddin was, he was in the street looking for a key. And this man walked by and he says, Mullah, what are you doing? You know the story. And he says, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm looking for my lost key. He says, can I help you? He says, oh, of course. So the man gets on his hands and knees, and the mullah, and they're looking 15 minutes, crazily looking for this key. And the man says, after 15 minutes, he says, where did you lose the key? He says, oh, nonchalant. He says, I lost it in my house. The guy goes crazy, says, well, why are you looking here? He says, oh, it's simple, because there's more light. What's the moral of that story? Most people are going to look and develop their models in their home because they're comfortable. The reason right now digital transformation is unsuccessful in the world, 84% of companies fail at digital transformation, is because they use the default. They throw money into technology and they throw money into software. What they need to do is look at a different light. They need to clear their mind and look at a different way of approaching the use of digital in their environment, and they have to understand purpose and values and transformation of the organization. So they have to be more people-centric instead of just being money-centric.
On that happy and philosophical note, Professor, real pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.